Welcome back to a rainy Portugal. It's that time of the year. I live in Porto and it has been raining quite a bit. Everyone has told me that this is probably the rainiest time they've seen in a while. Anyway, I wanted to talk about my experience as an expat. Why I became an expat, what my process was, and some of the things that I had to deal with. So I had been looking for a place to retire for a number of years. I looked at Mexico initially, and I have friends in Puerto Vallarta. I've been there many times. It's a beautiful city with a beautiful culture, but the summers are a bit hot for me, so that wound up being out of the picture. Portugal had been pretty high on my radar. Like many of you, I'm sure, we've all seen everyone flocking to Portugal because of the wonderful people, the culture, the beautiful landscape, the better cost of living. So I had visited Portugal 2 years in a row, each for about a month, and absolutely loved it and felt this was the right place for me. So in November of 2024, I started laying the groundwork for getting my D7 retirement visa in Portugal. So I did this starting November 2024. I started laying the groundwork. And there's a lot of paperwork that you have to pull together. The first thing I did was make an appointment at the VFS office, and that's a organization that works with other countries to process people and their paperwork. You look for the one in your region. Mine happened to be San Francisco, so I set that for January 31st because I wanted enough time to gather the documents that I needed. And some of the most critical documents that take time, one is an FBI report, which is apostilled, and you have to get fingerprints. You can do that at the post office, and then digitally it gets sent to the FBI, who sends back a record that says whether you have a criminal record. So you need to get that. That takes time. I also needed to get a travel insurance and show travel insurance for the period of time that my D7 visa would be active and before I get my residency card. So that's really critical. They look at that. You also have to have 1 year accommodation, that you have to have all the paperwork showing you have that for the time that you're going to be there. That means the deposit, means the lease, or if you bought a property, you need to have that to show as well. You need to have a Portuguese bank account, and it must be funded. Now, the funding and how much it is depends on how many people are coming in your family. Depends, it changes every year, so I can't give you the exact amount at the moment. But you need to have it funded in euros. And setting up that bank account can take some time. It can be very difficult to do it from the US. The other one is to get your NIF, which is your Número de I'm going to butcher this, Identificação Fiscal. It's your Portuguese tax number. Anyway, that also takes some time, and oftentimes you have to go through a third-party organization to do that. Unless you happen to be visiting Portugal, then if you're there, it's real simple to set that up. So I would get your NIF if you're in Portugal and try to set up a bank account. Now, I have heard stories of people going to different banks and being rejected, and then they'll go to the same bank but a different branch and being accepted. So if you're in Portugal visiting and you have an intention of coming to Portugal as an expat, I would get that process started. You also need to have your one-way plane ticket from the US into Portugal. It can't go to another country. It needs to be directly into Portugal. And you need to show that ticket when you go in for your VFS appointment. And that's not the only document. There are financial documents you need to show. There's just a list of them. And there are some amazing Facebook groups that help you with this, that can guide you, that have documents. So there's a very strong community for that. Now, one of the things I did was I used a binder that someone on a Facebook group had shown, this binder, and it was amazing. I will tell you, this was really saved me from an organizational standpoint. There's a lot of there are a lot of folder slots in there, and it's easy to organize. Now, I'll leave the link below. Just know that if you click on that link and it takes you to Amazon, I'll get a small amount as commission, as an affiliate link. The next step was, after I went to that VFS appointment, which was, I will tell you, stressful, because you have this load of documents and you're hoping that you didn't miss anything, and you're hoping that they accept it. And then you have to wait. And my appointment was January 31st. I did not get informed till March, even though my flight was in April, specifically April 7th. And so I didn't find out till the later half of March, so it was nerve-wracking. Also, I took my dog. Now, I have a small dog. I have a 9-pound dog, Yorkie, and she's pretty chill. But taking a dog across internationally can be a challenge, especially if you have a big dog. And you really want to think about the stress level of the dog. You really want to think about how the dog is going to get there. And in my case, I wanted to find the shortest flight. And a lot of us will go from Newark, New Jersey to Lisbon, or from New York to Lisbon, because I believe it's about a 6-hour flight. And you want to be really conscious of the bathrooms, the break areas for the dogs in the different airlines, as well as when you hit ground in Lisbon, because you're going to have to go through the process of going through border control, and then you have to go see the vet in the airport that you're arriving in, for them to look through all the paperwork for your dog. Now, this is pretty critical, is that 10 days before you fly out, you and your vet need to go through a process whereby they submit a certificate request to the USDA. And that means a physical exam and all of your dog vaccinations, and it has to get submitted. Now, I believe it cost me $500 to get that done. And then that certificate sometimes doesn't come back till the day before you fly out. So you really want to make sure that you are looking at the timeline of when your flight is going out. If it's on a Sunday or if it's on a Monday and the certificate won't get back till the day before and it's a Sunday, can you get that? So it gets complicated. And you also want to make sure that if you have a small dog like me, that the carrying case meets the airline's restrictions, and they are pretty strict. So very important to do that. For my D7 visa, they want to see rental income. They want to see some passive income, your Social Security, which I'm too young for, a pension, etc. So I wanted to hold on to my condo, but I had to clean everything out. I had to reduce. At the same time, as many of you may know, I was taking care of my parents. And some may say, well, why did you do this when your parents were in in-home hospice and your mother had cancer? So I started the process in November of 2024. My mother was still alive, but both my parents understood that I needed to keep moving forward. It was important for me to have an eye on the future, and I was managing both. And it also gave me something to really focus on and get my mind off of the challenges with my mother and my father so that I could balance myself. It gave me something to work on besides just taking care of them, which for me was healthy. So my parents understood why I was doing this. One of the things I also wanted to make sure of is that I had everything set up before I left. And one of the most important things was communication. Making sure that I could communicate with my father, making sure I could communicate with the hospice nurses, making sure I could communicate with family members, and also anyone back in managing my condo. So it's very common in Europe to use WhatsApp. And I set up WhatsApp on my friend's and my father's phone and asked the hospice nurse to put it on her phone, as well as some people, other family members and friends. And so there are two WhatsApps that I got. I have the basic WhatsApp for my US number, and then when I got my Portuguese phone number, I got the WhatsApp for business. And I can have them both on my mobile phone, and it allows me to communicate with everyone I need to. Now, for my US number, I used Tello. Now, I'm not supported by them, they're not sponsoring me or anything like that, but a lot of expats use Tello. And then I use Vodafone here in Portugal. Now, my Vodafone contract, which also pays for internet, high-speed internet, everything I might need mobile-wise, is about 49 euros a month. So it's pretty darn good. Some of the things that you also have to figure out is, what are you going to do with your mail when you forward it? You have to be very conscious, because some of your financial institutions, if they realize that you don't have a home address in the US and you're living somewhere else, they will shut down your account. They will freeze it. And that's something you have to be very cautious about, and you have to look at how you're going to manage that. Another thing that I did was I collected all of my medical documents in paper form and digital form, as well as legal documents, my trust, my father's trust. I wanted to have all of that on hand to make sure that if, God forbid, something happened back home, or if something happened to me here, that I had that documentation. So that was pretty critical. I landed in Portugal on April 7th, and I had a lot of luggage. It was, I can't tell you, I think I had 6 bags, a dog, very exhausted. The next step, once you get to Portugal, is your immigration appointment. This is where they take your biometrics, they take similar documentation that you had for the VFS appointment. There are 2 paths that seem to happen. Once your VFS appointment goes through and you become approved, they request your passport, and you send your passport to the VFS office, who then get it stamped and with your visa. And then sometimes they will put in a link to a scheduled appointment. Other times, I know other people who that scheduled appointment never got in there, and they have spent a long time trying to get into an immigration appointment here in Portugal just to get the residency card. Well, I had mine stamped in my passport, and I went to my appointment, which was in July of 2025. I had been taking care of my father and flew back just for this appointment. I had to get 24-hour care for my father while I was gone, and just for a month that was $25,000. So I got to the appointment. I sat down and they told me my appointment had been pushed out now to November. It was devastating. And you're only allowed to come into Portugal twice on your D7 visa. You have to then stay and wait for your residency processing and get your residency card. But I had to head back to the US because I needed to put my father in assisted living because that $25,000 a month was not sustainable. So we wound up, I flew back. I collected a lot of the paperwork from the hospice, from the assisted living, and when I flew back to Portugal, I hired a lawyer to help me and to represent me at the next immigration appointment. So fast forward to November, my lawyer and I go to the immigration appointment, sit down, and they've pushed me now to February 9th. Now this is surprisingly not uncommon, but what's unusual, what would frustrate people is that I know people who got here later than I did, or who got here about the same time I did, and already have the residency card. But for some reason, myself and I know many others who've been pushed out repeatedly. So my next one is coming up in a couple weeks. I'll keep you informed. I am praying that I get my processing and then I get my residency card, because I can't travel outside Portugal until I have that. So stay tuned and I will give you an update. Anyway, that was my experience with being an expat and moving. Now, I have friends who have said, "Are you happy?" I keep hearing this since I've been here. Are you happy? Well, that's a complicated question because I'm acclimating. I'm trying to understand the language. I'm trying to learn the language. I'm trying to go grocery shopping and normalize my life. I am trying to make friends. I enjoy the city. It's beautiful, and looks like it's getting a little sunnier out, which is wonderful. But it is a process, and but I am very happy to be here, and hope that this has helped others figure out their journey. All right. Well, thank you very much, and I will reach back out to you shortly. Talk to you later. Bye.